Actually.
All right, cool.
Yes, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spergonomics. And with me is a guest I've been trying to get on for a long time, but eventually the stars aligned, and here we are. Miss Rose of Dawn, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Slightly tired, but I've managed to get a
Mm.
second wind. Now, don't worry, guys. The co-hosts will be here soon. Alkazai is with the Famalan, and Joe is currently he is Chicago. He is AFK. But don't worry, he will be here in just a couple of minutes. He's got to do something. Nothing too important. Don't worry, guys. He'll be here. So anyway, Rose, how you doing? I've already asked you
Sorry,
that in
it's
person.
kind of cutting out a
Is
little
it?
bit there. What did you say?
How you doing?
Yeah,
Even though I asked
I'm
you.
good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, despite all the hell that's going on in the world. I'm good.
Yeah, I got a little bit flustered with some people on Twitter, but now I'm pretty chill.
Oh, what was that about?
Oh, it's just people saying that the riots and stuff are justified. It's like I don't think wanton destruction of people's communities is particularly justified. I mean, of course, peaceful protest is, but not
Well,
that.
it depends. It depends on who's carrying out the riots, because if you listen to different people, particularly on the left, you have some who are saying, well, this is just justified black anger against like a racist and oppressive system. But then you have others just saying, oh no, wait, it's just white nationalists. It's white nationalists making us all look bad. So you effectively have two narratives. It's either forgive the rioting because it's POC, or the rioting is white supremacists for some reason,
Yeah,
and
that came out
so
today.
therefore you have to condemn. Like the white supremacist angle makes no sense. Like
No, it
I
doesn't.
haven't seen any evidence to suggest it actually is white supremacists,
As far
other
as
than I think it's Minneapolis's mayor mentioned something along those lines. But from what I've gathered, he's quite left wing, so he's not exactly going to be blaming his comrades for what's going on.
he
Like they're
also
going to look
said,
at trying to shift the blame as much as they can.
he also said, is this the police chief? Did you say?
Well, there was I mentioned the mayor, but I think the police chief also said, "Oh, it's white supremacists."
Because remember before he may have said that he said that a lot of the people, or maybe even all of them, it'll be most of them, I think, were actually from outside the area, believe it or not, which made me
Oh,
question that. I mean, I didn't disbelieve him. I thought I can totally see agitators being bussed in.
oh, I believe that. I believe that a lot of people involved in it aren't actually from Minneapolis themselves. I think that a lot. I think that. I mean, when you have a look at a lot of the kind of the footage from the riots or some other people taking part, it isn't just like a group of like Black Lives Matter activists. There's definitely more going on there.
There's
Like,
Antifa. There's some people said there's police agent provocateurs. Who knows?
I think it's a combination of all of them. It would not surprise me if there actually were police, like, kind of going undercover in that. Like, the American police are quite dodgy in that sense. But at the same time, there's a lot of people going there who have their own reasons for wanting to get involved. And it just to simply point it as a one thing, just to say, well, it's all to do with racism. Like, there's a lot more to it than that. Like, I think Tucker Carlson put it in a good way when he mentioned that it's kind of like an underclass of people who feel like they have no stake in society, and so they're willing to look to basically use whatever excuse they can to burn.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think that's exactly what's going on here. I think there's a lot of groups using that kind of one spark of anger, which ironically was something which everyone across the political spectrum condemns the death of is it George Floyd
Yes.
is his name. Yeah, like everyone condemned. Like I didn't see anyone really not condemning his death. I mean, you even had like major conservative pundits condemning it. You had conservative politicians condemning it. You had libertarians. You've had classic liberals. You've had obviously people on the left. So you had this weird period where everyone was almost kind of pretty much everyone was in unison condemning what had happened. And then you have some extremist groups who have effectively used that anger to live out their fantasy. And we now have the hellscape that is the Democrat cities of America.
There's been a few Republican cities too. Oh, we have a wild scrump.
Have there?
Yeah. Cincinnati, in Ohio.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Surprise!
Hey, Scrump.
I thought I would say hello.
Hello.
You can fill in until Chicago arrives if you like.
Yeah, I saw you two on here on your own, and I thought you might be lonely, so
Aw.
I thought I'd say hello.
Aw. Well, apparently Stephen Molly meme was bootlicking, says Jim Jesus, but I'm not sure who he was bootlicking. Was it the rioters? Was it the police? Probably the police. Knowing him.
Wait, did you say that Cincinnati was a Republican city?
Well, it's in a Republican state, Ohio. And
Yeah, but when you look at the mayors of each city, not the state itself, but the mayors. Because, for example, Texas is a red state, but both Dallas and Houston have Democrat mayors.
John.
I'd say every major,
he's a Democrat.
every major metropolitan area, especially more deprived, I guess, metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan itself is, I guess it's a purple state, it's a swing state, but it is right now a red state. Everywhere outside of Detroit is very, very red in Michigan. And Cincinnati is the same outside of Columbus and Cincinnati and places like that.
Columbus as well, yeah.
Columbus has always been a very black city, though. I know there's a lot of areas of Columbus that people just won't go, and I've got a few people in Ohio, actually. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's in Atlanta at the moment, relatively central, actually, and they were saying that a lot of people are using this as an excuse to break into people's houses.
That doesn't surprise me.
There've been 3 break-ins in like his greater neighborhood, and he was saying he was holed up with a bunch of Koreans who have rifles, so he's got himself some roof Koreans.
Well,
which is probably what I do.
Well, now it's not the roof Koreans; it's door brothers. Did you see the video of the guys with the assault rifles just guarding doors? Oh, I think that's. It's Alcazar's
I think I did. There's a couple of them in Minneapolis, from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's where it was. Alcazar. I thought it'd be Chicago first.
Yeah, what happened to him? Wasn't he in here?
He's AFK. He'll be back. Don't worry. He's got to do something.
I've noticed something very interesting with this. When the lockdown protests started, they were quite small scale. There weren't that many of them, and there weren't that many people at them. There were maybe low thousands at most. A lot of the talk about that was how that would spread the virus.
Yes.
And now that this is happening, now that there's actual rioting and burning down a property, it seems that nobody's talking about the fact that this might spread the virus.
Wasn't it the mayor of Minneapolis? I think it might have been Minneapolis.
I know what you're talking about.
It was one of the mayors. Yeah,
it was an official in Minneapolis who told them to social distance. Yes, yeah. Within the media and within a lot of the pundits, a lot of the talk of the virus has completely gone away.
Yeah.
Well, no, there was one city councilwoman, forget her name. She said we need to declare racism as a public health threat, and I'm like, shut up.
Yes, they did. There's been a few like that. Again, I've been talking about with a lot of people. This is happening in blue cities and blue districts.
Yeah.
And come election time, all Trump needs to do is say, if you want to have riots in your area, vote for the Democrats. You know, this is what a blue district looks like. This is what a blue city looks like. And he's never going to win in places like Central Atlanta or the metropolitan Twin Cities areas, which are very, very heavily like immigrant now, especially with Minnesota's Somali population and Imran Omar and all that. But
the thing is, also Minnesota is just a very left-leaning state. The only ones that go red most of the time is the rural area, although it was very close last time.
Oh yeah.
But the problem is, any purple district, I think, in any purple state, this is going to make them more likely to vote red.
Yeah, like I had quite a good kind of take on this, being that a lot of the Democrat voters basically asked for this kind of thing to happen in the first place because it's effectively the result of their own runnings of the state. It's interesting when you look at the leftist kind of criticism of what's happening. A lot of it generally just seems to be aimed at Trump because they're going to always blame Trump no matter what. But the way that America works, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it isn't just that Trump, whatever Trump says goes. I mean, like different mayors of different cities or governors of different states, they're the ones who ultimately have the power over the policies that impact the cities.
Despite what a lot of people are saying, this isn't a nationwide thing. This is very isolated in particular neighborhoods, particular cities, and particular districts. And it is isolated in heavy black.
They're going to always blame Trump no matter what.
It's the exact same thing. Maybe people aren't seeing it as much on political lines, but from what I've been told by even like Democrat people that I know, like soft Democrats, like moderate, the traditional Democrat voter base, is they are definitely seeing this along the racial lines now, and it's another reinforcement to people like wondering what the hell's been going on in these heavy black areas and heavy black cities, and I think I guess it follows on that they are Democrat, but I've been quite surprised, despite how the check marks might talk and despite how the mainstream media might talk, how many people have been like, holy shit, I didn't realize this would actually happen, and does actually happen, and the stereotypes to an extent for certain sections of that population.
Here's something you might find interesting. There was, I don't know if it was concurrent or it just finished, but there was a similar protest to the ones in Virginia, was it? With the armed men, but it was black men doing it. It was like a black gun rights group doing it. I might be wrong, but it was armed black men. But they were doing the same kind of protest. They were peaceful. They were just hanging out there with the placards and guns, open carrying. Yeah. Apparently you can do that in Michigan.
Yeah.
And not a peep. You got a few articles online, but not a peep from the mainstream media about, look at these these civic people doing their jobs. And I think there's a reason why they're not showing them. They want to show black people a certain way, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it would be hypocritical for them to paint it in that way, considering the protests at the start of the month. When the lockdown protest, was it lockdown? What was the one where they actually open carried? Was that to do with lockdown, or was that to do with?
Yeah, that was to do with lockdown. The ones in Michigan and Virginia.
But I thought it was, and I saw a very strange tweet yesterday trying to kind of once again painting Trump as a racist, where the guy pointed out, this is how Trump talks about white protesters, and this is how Trump talks about black protesters.
Oh, yeah.
Now forgive me if I'm wrong, but the people who were open carrying in that Minnesota protest, they didn't light anything on fire. They didn't discharge their weapons. They didn't destroy anything.
I think, wasn't it?
No, they didn't.
Oh, was that in Minnesota as well?
They just sat there and kind of read for 2 hours or some shit.
You also got
about it was
in Michigan.
In Michigan. It's funny that they're saying this, but I think people are noticing the contrast, that they're saying that these are peaceful protests, and they're saying that those are violent protests. And I think most people have seen the absurdity of the way reporting has gone. This is another nail in the coffin of mainstream media. Yeah. And I think everyone was laughing at the fact that CNN was being attacked by ostensibly the same riot that they've helped create. It felt very, you get what you fucking deserve.
And another thing
I think my favorite part of my favorite bit of reporting from all of this was the guy from MSNBC standing in front of the burning building saying it was a mostly peaceful protest.
That was very Leslie. Yeah, that was very Leslie Nielsen, Nick Gunn, and also very comical Ali as well from the
So also something interesting to note: the Minneapolis police chief yesterday said that all the people arrested yesterday were from out of the state.
Yeah.
Yes, there's been a huge amount of people bossed in. I don't know by who. A lot of people are saying that a large number of them came from Chicago, which is quite a way away. But yeah, a lot of the rioters are outside agitators. But again, they're burning down blue districts and a lot of the time immigrant-owned small businesses. So it is very much an own goal for their worldview. One of the funnier things I've heard this referred to as, because of the whole joggers thing, is it's a marathon. It's just a peaceful marathon.
Literally, they were running from place to place like a swarm of locusts. So yeah,
they were just out. It was a marathon.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about the that tweet trying to compare how Trump talks about white protests and black protests. Well, the white protest was 20% black, and there's loads of pictures of black gun owners with white gun owners, all on their own, just posing with their AR-15s. Yeah, that's a white protest, and Actually, there's been quite a few, like, people of different races in these riots. And whether or not that's
yeah, there's lots of white people involved.
Yeah, there is. Like, most of it's Antifa, I reckon. But some people genuinely do get swept away in the crowd. That happened in 2011. There were people who had never rioted in their lives. They just got swept up, and that's looting basmati rice, from the greengrocers.
Oh, the Tesco basmati rice image is a classic. That is an absolute classic.
There have been some quite funny things I've seen being looted. Like there was a Lego. Someone bought I think it's like this Lego set.
Someone was in Lego from Target.
Somebody else looted a Nerf gun.
There was also a woman twerking as Minneapolis burns. I just thought, well, that just sums it up, doesn't it? So what I wanted to ask you though, Rose, was how do you think your was it an interview or a discussion you had with that non-binary person? How did it go? Hey, Chicago.
Oh, you mean with Mo the other day?
Yeah.
It was interesting-ish. So just to kind of, as a bit of a disclaimer, Mo is quite young, like 18 years old.
Looked older. Sorry if you don't mind me saying.
Mo is very young. And I think a lot of that did show in the way that they were talking during the interview. I think Mo was admittedly quite nervous because whilst I know they've talked to other kind of true scum individuals in the past, I'm probably the person with the biggest platform that they've been on a stream with. And so I could understand why that might be a bit intimidating for them. There were quite a few concerns that I had with some of the things that they were saying. Being honest, the conversation actually left me more skeptical of non-binary people than before. But I can put that down to maybe they were very nervous and so weren't putting across their views in a way that it would have made a lot more sense.
See, I watched some of it and I wrote in the chat, you're a tomboy. That's
I wouldn't. I kind of disagreed with a lot of people making comments like that was what was going on because at least respect them for coming on the show.
I did, but I was like, I can't. It's not real. It's not like you. You've got a legitimate issue, and you've taken the steps to rectify it and stuff like that. But they don't. They it seems to me like it's just a trend or. Some of them get duped into it. There's nothing scientific about it.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the concerns that I had because Mo had only been out for a couple of months, had kind of first heard about non-binary whilst being in a school group in which there were several non-binary people, had a non-binary friend who really introduced them into it, who has since detransitioned.
Interesting.
And they had only come out a few months earlier and are looking at having top surgery, but haven't had any medical appointments yet. They've said that they haven't been able to get any medical appointments, but I know from personal experience that when you're dealing with dysphoria, the very first thing you do is you get yourself on that medical pathway. So I also found it a few things a bit concerning when they were talking about how oppressive the right is and that they would never be accepted in the right because there simply isn't evidence for non-binary people in science in the same way that there is for a trans person like myself. And I that kind of alerted me a bit because there really isn't a lot of science on what it is to be non-binary, and I do think that does put a further onus on non-binary people to fully explain why it is they feel the way they do, because for the vast majority of them, it's very postmodern in their description of what a non-binary person is. You're looking at random phrases like, fighting the patriarchy being quite a common one. They don't like cis het stereotypes, and so they're rebelling against oppressive gender norms, and all of these are terms that do not mean anything to anyone.
I think the problem is with a lot of non-binary people that I've encountered online is they all tend to be about that age.
A lot of them are
over 21. Anyway, I just thought I'd say hey until people came in. I'm gonna have to go again now.
To stay if
you get myself food, but
all right. Thanks, Brianna. Thanks, Rump.
See you later.
No, I
later,
thought
Trump.
I'd come say hey at least. It's,
Yeah.
it's been nice. I'm gonna go watch the SpaceX launch as well, which is in like 3 minutes.
Ah.
So.
All right,
Have
bye.
fun.
Since-
Bye.
There was,
Yeah.
I also noticed that too. That they all tend to be under like 21, 22, something like that.
See, this
I
is our
wouldn't
resident
say
Zoomer.
that's. I wouldn't say that's the case. My own, again, when I talk about non-binary people, I talk about it a lot from my experience in real life with non-binary people. And yes, there are a lot of very young people who do it. You do find people in the late 20s, early 30s. There are a handful who come out as non-binary at a much older age. So it isn't just a case that it's going to be someone very, very young, but there certainly is a significant proportion of people who identify as NB and are around the age of 18. Like, that can't be ignored.
You know what's interesting? Do you remember that article in the Daily Mail where that woman whistleblowed on that school with what she called the grooming kind of gangs? Not gangs, there was grooming going on where people were becoming trans or something, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
No.
There was it was anyway. So what happened was this teacher whistleblowed about how the groups of kids who are mainly autistic girls who are being groomed by other kids, or rather older kids like 16, maybe 18-year-olds, into becoming transgender or non-binary, essentially.
Right.
And that the school is enabling it and putting them on. Taking them to the medical professionals, and they're being, fast tracked to surgery. Like some of them were even going to, have breast surgery and stuff. When you mentioned that she was in a group of friends like that, I got flashbacks of that. That article.
I mean, well, that's it. Well, non-binary doesn't come out of a vacuum. Like. Sorry, that's probably the wrong term. I'm a bit tired at the moment. What I mean is non-binary people only really come out as being non-binary when they've been around other non-binary people. Like you never see a case of the NBs in the wild. And this is why I tried to point out to Mo that you don't see right-wing or conservative non-binary people. They try to counter that by saying that actually there's this apparently famous conservative non-binary person who had appeared on Stephen Crowder. I did a bit of research into that, and the only person that I found was someone known as Jamie Shoup, who is one of the first legally recognized non-binary people, but has since detransitioned and is now someone who's firmly against transition of any kind for any person. So that's not really a case of a conservative NB. Yeah. The point still remains though that whereas being like a transsexual or being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or any other kind of like racial group or any kind of minority status, these are things that usually come about naturally. These are and these people act as individuals, and therefore they can have whatever belief system that they want. Like you being black, for example, doesn't mean that you have to vote Democrat, as much as a lot of Democrats would like you to do that, and why they use terms like Uncle Tom and other like very degrading racial insults aimed at blacks who vote conservative.
Here's an interesting
or,
comment.
Just saying that you ain't black.
You ain't black.
But of black people.
Sorry.
So I've just got an interesting comment from one of my boys, the Black Lord of Fenrir. Subscribe to him. If you look up notable non-binary people on Wikipedia, all but one of them was born after 1980. Now that's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of them are very young, because non-binary has only really come into mainstream conscience in the last 5 or so years. Like before then, it was one of these things you would hear about on Tumblr. I first came across a non-binary person in 2011, and that was when I was at a specific LGBT NUS conference. And there was a handful of non-binary people there who would flip out at anyone for misgendering them, when I had literally no idea what any of this meant. And it was really, really weird. But it is a new concept in terms of what mainstream society sees it. Something like a transsexual person such as myself have been around longer, certainly with medical treatment that can date back to the 1920s, with it being medically recognized in that way. So
technically earlier, if you
there's a
want,
lot
in the 1890s. You know,
Oh,
the
there's
Danish
no doubt earlier, no doubt earlier. But we know there is enough. There has been medical knowledge of transsexualism for like around about 100 years at this point. Whereas with non-binary, you simply don't have that same background to it. What you do have, though, is a lot of angry activists who are demanding that you see them in a particular way, and this is why I want to understand more about the idea that someone is non-binary simply because they have gender dysphoria like myself. Because my hypothesis is, I understand that you can have like a male who identifies strongly with being female and a female who identifies strongly with being male. I mean, I'm living proof of that. So by that definition, I do believe that there could be someone, or there could be people who don't identify with either sex. And so that is what causes them the distress. And so for them, they would want to, like, I assume, appear in such an androgynous way that it doesn't give them any kind of dysphoria, or it helps deal with those feelings. The problem that I have with that, though, is there's very little evidence to kind of back it up, and the explanations normally revolve around the social rather than the physical. And I don't think that's the best way in putting it across. Like, I am very much open to the idea of a non-binary person being a thing, and I don't want to I don't want to kind of be misconstrued in one way or another. It's not me becoming, like, a trans activist who says that all genders matter or anything like that, but I'm not also saying that, non-binary could never be a thing. My issue is that it's just... Sorry,
I know, carry on, sorry.
My issue is just that there isn't anything solid about it, and until there is, it's going to be very hard to get people to accept it. I will say, in Mo's defense, they were quite understanding that a lot of people wouldn't see them as anything but a woman. So, like, I gotta give props to them for that. I do think Mo is a nice person. I do disagree with them on a lot of things. But, like, I thank them for coming on the show and for talking to me about it. But I will be honest and say that I still don't fully understand it. And my previous ideas on what non-binary is haven't changed.
The way I see it is like, well, they never make any effort. Most of them anyway, 90% of them, never make any effort to look like what you would expect somebody who technically has no gender to look like. They just look like a man or they look like a woman. And did you see Lilith Lovett talk about this on Twitter? She made a tweet where I'm going to try and paraphrase it as best as I can, basically saying that it's valid because intersex people exist. I guess that's a very reductionist thing to say about it, but that's basically what it was. And I had to say to her, well, intersex people are not a separate gender. They're actually men or women, like me and you. The only thing is they're born with things that shouldn't be there. But most of them, when they get to puberty, the secondary organs or whatever, it basically stops working, and the dominant gender takes over. Well, not the gender, dominant thing that should be there anyway takes over. But some of them require, surgery or medication. It can be really hurtful for them. So, like, it's not the same, and you can't really justify non-binary with intersex itself. I said is actually a misleading term. Hermaphrodite is too, because there's no such thing as a human hermaphrodite. We're not like snails who are hermaphrodites in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah. Well, they misunderstand. Like you said, there's like a spectrum of different sexes. Being an intersex person doesn't make you not male or not female, or this whole new sex. A lot of it is effectively, in the nicest way possible, framing a mutation. No, that doesn't mean anything negative at all. There's nothing negative about that connotation. But that doesn't make someone who is intersex their own random sex. And that is a problem which, when a lot of the kind of the more non-binary activists use intersex as an example as to why they are valid, they completely misunderstand the fact that there are only two sexes. And now you can talk about gender expression, But again, the science going behind non-binary is very limited at best. One of the reasons why I've got Mo on the show is because they had an inkling of a good idea, which is a differentiation between a medical non-binary person and a social non-binary person. My understanding of that would be a non-binary person who, like a medical one, would have gender dysphoria and are therefore taking steps in order to medically transition, whereas a social one would be someone who just decides that they are the moon. And that's it. But there wasn't, at least when speaking with Mo, there wasn't a lot of need on Mo's part to kind of distance themselves from the social side, and so it therefore kind of makes it null and void.
I don't know if you've ever seen The Mighty Boosh, but you reminded me of the moon. I am the moon.
Oh yeah. Well, moon gender was something that someone legitimately defended to me a few years ago, and it was kind of the spark that made me start my channel.
Just makes me want to
NIMBY, gender?
like, not in my backyard.
Seriously, what the fuck is moon gender?
So the background behind this was someone posted on my Facebook, posted this article saying that, all genders are valid, respect all genders. And I responded to that kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit. It's like, are you saying that, people who identify as the moon or identify as trigender, are you saying that they are as valid as I am? And I was expecting people to respond to that saying, don't be ridiculous. That's stupid. That's not what we're talking about. But what happened was they said, oh yeah, all these genders are valid. These are all incredibly valid and they should all be respected. So they were saying that to have your gender as the moon is to be respected. And if that's not absurd enough, I think it was last year I had to remove someone from my Facebook because she decided to come out as the planet Jupiter.
Which, you know what? If she said the god Jupiter, I would have been all right with that.
No, it was a planet. No, it was a planet. It was just absolute bullshit. And the responses that she got were the very typical thing that queer people do whenever anyone comes out, and it's just always using the new name and the new pronouns and saying that they are a very good folk or something stupid like that. And it was just such a level of absurdity that I couldn't deal with it anymore.
I honestly don't blame you. I would have just been like, are you having fun? Are you messing with me? That would have been my first reaction. Jupiter, you don't mean the god, Zeus. Technically they're different, but
I mean, it would be
What if she's like so fat that like she is just Jupiter?
Well, this is the disappointing thing. She's actually incredibly thin.
Oh wow.
Oh no.
So she's more like Mercury, I guess, because that's a tiny little planet.
But even if she decided to identify as the god, like that would still be stupid. Like this person had like continuously changed however her gender was for a very long time. Like she was non-binary, then she was a trans man, then she was a normal woman, then non-binary again, and kind of just going through all of these things, and then seems to have settled on being the planet Jupiter. And everyone was clapping along and just saying, oh yes, it's amazing that you're discovering what your gender is, as though it's this kind of like coming of age mission that everyone does in their lives. Like the vast majority of people don't think about it. You only think about it if you have something like gender dysphoria that causes you to think about it. Otherwise, you're doing it because of societal pressures. Yeah. But that societal pressure is not coming from the patriarchy. It's coming from your own clique. Until these kind of trenders actually appear in the wild from all sorts of backgrounds and not just the kind of university groups we're all used to seeing, I can't treat it as a valid thing.
Yeah,
because it's nothing more than an ideology.
And I'll start to take it seriously, unironically.
I mean, I am open to the idea of it being a thing. I'm just not convinced at the moment that it is, until I see actual evidence to support it. And more importantly, these people appearing in places that aren't just left-wing hug boxes. That for me is the ultimate test. Like I've had a few non-binary people contact me over Twitter and say, oh yeah, I'm a right-wing non-binary person, but there isn't really a kind of face to put to it. And it's like, it becomes a lot more difficult to kind of understand that. Like, it's why having people within the public eye for something like this is so important.
And what
Like
do they
you
mean by
have
right-wing?
conservative you have conservative trans people in the public eye,
Mm.
people like Blair White and arguably myself.
Frozen
But you
Binary,
don't have
a
a
friend of
cons-
mine as well. I don't know if she is actually, but I guess she would be in comparison to the SJWs. Yeah, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
who Frozen is.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah,
Who you talking about, Mitch?
Frozen Binary, an old friend.
Mm.
Yeah, the name rings a bell.
She used to be on YouTube a lot. Now she's just living a life with a girlfriend. Just just being
Fair
a
enough.
normal person, unlike me.
Mm.
But anyway, and here's another question though. That you do know what the pink pill thing is, right?
Yes.
What do you think about that? I don't know if have you talked about that? Did I miss that video or?
Yeah, pretty much I have. So the idea of the pink pill being people effectively being coerced, although that's quite a strong term to really describe what's going on, but being made to convince themselves that they actually are trans, that the things that they are doing is because actually they aren't a man or they aren't a woman, it's because they are a trans person. You see this a lot with the femboys or kind of cross-dressers who will regularly be told that actually that they're an egg being a term for a kind of trans person who's just coming out.
Oh, that just sounds. Is that an actual term for in the community, or is that something that
Egg,
they say?
yes, egg
okay.
is a term. So egg is, I don't find it a particularly creepy term because I've seen it used in a lot of more rational discussions. Like it would normally, someone who's described as an egg would normally have come out themselves rather than other people claiming that they are trans and therefore coming out on their behalf.
Yeah.
So that can be so I don't so much have a problem with the term egg for that reason, but I do have a problem with it when it's kind of applied to people like you'll look at a lot of the femboys like Dimitri Monroe and like Cafe Beef. There's quite a lot of them who get told that they are actually trans when they're not, and when you try and point out to the wider community that this is going on, they end up trying to completely deflect from the problem by saying, well, you just got this from Twitter, it doesn't matter, as though like there aren't real people behind the accounts on Twitter. Like these aren't actually conversations that are going on within the community, because they almost certainly are. It doesn't need a massive organization like Stonewall to do a study on it in order for it to be a thing. I mean, these people make up their own genders on the fly without there being any evidence. It's fairly interesting when they will condemn like something coming from Twitter, or like they ultimately is there to prove a point. They say that's not real. Meanwhile, I identify as 3 genders at once, and my pronouns are fire, and that's a sensible thing.
It's a shame if their opinions aren't particularly fire, but hey, whatever.
No,
I remember when a friend of mine, for his gender, just put in the N-word on Twitter. And he got some people banned for not calling him that.
fantastic.
Thing is, though, right, the pink pill thing.
Fucking based.
Like you mentioned the term egg, it's not creepy in the usual traditional way that they would say it, because it's a metaphor, right? You're discovering yourself, right?
That's entirely all it is.
It's kind
Yeah,
of like
and so the idea being
right?
you hatch into a trans woman
Yeah.
or trans man. That's the reason kind
I
of
would say
behind
you're
it.
more sculpted than hatched, but that's I don't know.
Well, it's an egg. It's an egg. So you don't sculpt an egg.
You sculpt a statue though.
Yeah, but statues aren't eggs.
I know. I don't know. I think a statue sounds more aesthetic though, because in a way you become yourself by chiseling the marble.
In that case, the question would be like, oh, you're just a blob of marble.
I don't know. Marble's a nice rock.
It's not quite as cute.
I know. I guess
It's
not.
like
I don't know. But
anyway.
it is a weird, strange term when they use it. But the femboys, for the large part, it's like, no, we're men. We just like to dress in dresses and do girly things, but we're still very much men.
Yeah.
No, Boy George wasn't a femboy. He was androgynous. He didn't dress like a woman. It was just mixing and matching. And I don't know if this is his age or if he genuinely does not like this kind of trend that he's seeing, because he's been attacked for
Oh, he hates it.
Yeah.
He hates it. He absolutely hates it.
I
Who
mean,
the fuck is Boy George?
Boy George is a very famous British singer from a band called Culture Club who did a song called Karma Chameleon. You'll have heard it probably.
Yep. Yeah, Boy George is quite. He's a very big star in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And he was part of a movement called the New Romantic Movement, which was like an 80s thing. It was very short-lived, actually. It was like a late 70s, 80s thing, and men and women would... Actually, the women were very feminine. It was more the men who would dress in makeup. Only facial makeup, really. Only people like Boy George went the whole David Bowie thing, but it was mainly just to be trendy, and it was a little bit hipster, but it was all about kind of breaking down, not barriers, I guess. It was a bit edgy, but considering it had already been done by Bowie and Bolan and even Little Richard in the 50s, he'd already done all that stuff. But that's what it was about.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can argue maybe that's what's influenced this non-binary thing. Are they looking back at things like that and thinking, well, what if we are that? What if it's not a fashion statement, you know? Or maybe they're trying to create something out of nothing, I don't know. Because David Bowie would not say that he was, anything like that. In fact, when he came out, he was lying. He wasn't bi, he never was.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the eras that you're in. I mean, a few years ago, Eddie Izzard would have just made the point that he is just a cross-dresser or transvestite. Like, that's all he said. But now he says that he's transgender because he's firmly bought into this bubble.
I would say he's doing
which is
that
ludicrous.
I would say he's doing that for clout, to fit in. I don't think.
Absolutely.
He knows what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely, he is.
Because he's still dressing the same way, like we've always known him as. In fact, for a while, he actually toned it down. Like, he was very masculine for many years. Only recently.
Yeah, he was.
Not that I have a problem with it. It's Eddie Izzard, man. Again, I listen to David Bowie and I'll listen to metal. Like, one of my idols is Rob Halford, a gay man. He would dress up in the leather and stuff, and like, it's not an issue for me. But it's when you try to create this false identity with it. And not only that, it affects people. It affects trans people like you as well, and people judge you based on their actions, and it's totally not.
That's
not
right.
Oh, apparently, Porcelain Chip says New Romantic was very 1700s court. Yeah, I can see that. At least with I can see that. It was a bit more postmodern. But pink pilling. I asked you this in private, didn't I? But do you think ContraPoints was pink pilled?
I don't know. I would say that there's quite a bit of dodgy stuff in her past. I mean, I have had a look over Kiwi Farms.
Oh, I did.
On some of the threads on her, and I've watched a couple of videos on her background as well. I mean, I would say that she is at least kind of doing a fairly successful transition. I'm wording everything quite carefully here because simps might well come across it and believe that I'm trying to start drama when I'm not. To be honest, it's something that I would look into more before making a solid comment on it. I don't want it to just sound like I'm kind of throwing shade because she basically misrepresented me to millions of people.
I would agree with that. God, I thought if only Prince of Queens had seen that video. I can imagine.
Yeah, I know.
Video.
Rose's video and ContraPoints' video. Because ContraPoints not responded to you. She more just mentioned you and took you out of context.
It wasn't so much a mention. It was a good 5-minute segment on me.
Segment.
Which, and I believe she only did that because I'm friends with Blair. Like, I basically, she only talked about me as a follow-on to Blair, where she called me, Blair's understudy. I believe that was the term that she used. And she would regularly critique Blair whilst also critiquing me. So I do think that it is a bit of a personal thing there. I mean, Contra's quite known for her obsession with Blair. I mean, she has that character, Tiffany Tumbles. She refers to Blair all the time as Vanessa LeBlanc.
I'll run that.
It's supposed to be like a Valley Girl reference, I believe. It's quite a strange.
Which is ironic because ContraPoint sounds like a Valley Girl.
Isn't she from Baltimore though?
I mean, it doesn't matter, is it? It's more of a state of mind than it is a literal area at this point.
But it's more like, well, Blair lives in kind of like the trendy area of LA,
Cali.
like of California.
Yeah, she's from.
No,
California,
I thought she lived in Baltimore.
No, California. Maybe she's from there originally. I don't know.
No, she's not originally from California, but she lives in California now.
I recently found out we're the same age, which shocked me. I found out a lot of weird things about people's ages. Like I found out that one big YouTuber I watch, Some Ordinary Gamers, is younger than me. I guess it's the beard. Actual Justice Warrior was close to popping in again. Aha, naughty. Caught you that time. But anyway, who else? What I was going to say now, I've lost my train of thought now. Yes, a lot of the people, because you forget how young people are in this game. Like, it's not just a load of old people on our side. Like, we're all young. You know, I mean, I don't want to ask your age, as I don't want to be cruel or rude, you know. But we're all pretty young, and Alcazar he's just a little urchin.
Yeah, I'm still in a diaper.
He is, yeah.
Oh, little baby Alcazar.
Aww. Just want to rub
Don't sound like this weird, Chicago, please.
So, how did you get into this, Rose? Like,
YouTube.
YouTube, and also really your opinions. How did you go down the pipeline, the rabbit hole, so to speak?
Well, I started watching. I think I started off watching more atheist videos a few years ago when I was in my deep atheist phase that I think a lot of people go through.
Oh yeah, I went through.
Yeah, and that then led me on to things like the skeptic community, as it were. And at the time, I was still quite involved with London's queer community, and I mainly got involved in the skeptic side, or started watching it a lot because I was getting pissed off with all the magical genders and the pronouns that are being thrown out. I used to frequent a Reddit board called Tumblr in Action.
Oh, I remember Tumblr in Action.
Yeah, I mean, like it will. I'm sure it's still around, but like I haven't been on it in a very, very long time. Like I just don't use Reddit anymore. I haven't used it in years. I basically found myself getting more and more annoyed with these various groups who were claiming to speak on my behalf. I did also used to write for an LGBT news site called Gay Star News. I worked for them as a reporter, and I would occasionally write some opinion pieces that would get a lot of views, but I would also piss off a lot of people by writing them. Like there was one where I told people that using phrases like fuck cis people wasn't helpful, and a lot of people got really pissed off with that. I wrote another one on how an episode of South Park wasn't transphobic, and that got a lot of ire as well. So I've always had a fairly skeptical outlook at the way in which the kind of LGBT community, as it were, would run with their beliefs. And eventually I started my channel because I wasn't seeing at least anyone in the UK with the similar kind of views that I did, even though I knew that they were out there. I mean, at the time, especially that, like, other than Blair, there wasn't really many other trans people with a similar kind of mindset. Like, you had people like Calvin Garrer and maybe like Miss London and Ella Grant, but they're not really political channels so much. They're just young people. They're just young people having fun. Like they still have like political views from time to time, but you know they're like they know who their target audience is, and you know they have fun with that. And so I started my channel kind of on that bent, but also I wanted to use a lot of the issues I saw in trans politics, in particular, like the way in which identity politics was being abused in order to bully their way through various legislations or getting people fired. I kind of wanted to use that as a springboard to talk about more widespread like political beliefs. And I had a good time like making the videos, and they started to get quite popular. Like I would say that, like, you know, my rise on YouTube was fairly gradual until around July last year, and that was when I really took off with the whole uni thing. And at the moment I'm sitting on about 32,000 subscribers, and so I think I'm doing quite well.
I think you've done amazingly well, and I think you've definitely helped a lot of people's image of trans people. I think you're definitely doing a lot of good work in making people realise actually it's not a hive mind. It's technically not really much of a community. It's more people who are individuals. They have their own outlook. Yes, there are these groups, but they don't all think the same. They're not all crazy. They're normal.
Yeah.
They're normal people like you and me. And I'm really commend you for that. I mean, I know Blair was doing it for years, and I think my old friend Frozen was as well. But it's good to see more people doing that, because when all you see in the mainstream media and on Twitter, which gets blasted out by the algorithms and the media themselves, you get this impression that it's a bit crazy and these people are subversive, and it's nothing like this. Most people are not like that, especially the older ones. Like for example,
there's a further.
So I was just going to say, sorry, that for older gay men, it was just marriage. They didn't want anything else. This is what equal rights. That's what it was.
Yeah, there was a further kind of angle to it. Was when you look at the kind of trans people that are interviewed in the media in the UK, it's the vast majority of them are these kind of radical leftist activist types. The ones who are Munro Bergdorf, Paris Lees. There's this pair called Fox and Owl.
Fox and Owl. Never heard of them.
Like they're very, very annoying. But there's a lot. So there's a lot of these kind of more lefty ones. But the only alternative voices that you really hear are people like Debbie Hayton, who I have a lot of respect for. But Debbie Hayton talks about trans issues more from a radical feminist point of view. And I'm not a radical feminist, because I think that in regards to the kind of TRA war that's going on, a lot of them are effectively two sides of the same coin. A lot of them play on identity politics and use the same kind of insults. Like, you'll regularly hear a gender critical feminist telling people that, you're being misogynistic if you have this particular viewpoint, in the same way that a trans right activist will call someone transphobic for issuing a viewpoint that they don't like. There's a lot of the same mudslinging goes on between sides. A lot of them will be very disingenuous with one another. Hell of a lot of false accusations fly across. Like, it's fairly interesting looking at the recent J.K. Rowling accusation that came out. Like, someone said, I think it was yesterday, when she was accused of being dangerous towards children.
Oh, God.
Which was an absolutely stupid accusation to make.
Do you remember when it was the Conservatives saying that?
Yeah, but the problem with that is that you have the both sides use that same argument against people they don't like. Like, there's plenty of kind of trans activist types who have seen on the likes of Twitter who, like, clearly don't really look like bad people at all. Like, I could strongly disagree with some of their views, but I don't think they're bad people. But they'll still get slated as being like they're a misogynist. They're homophobic. They want to brainwash children. Like, they throw all these both sides just throw the same kind of dirt at one another, and they act absolutely offended when the other side does it to them. Yeah, and it's one of the really frustrating things when I'm not like a centrist in this issue at all. I have my own very defined belief, although it might be considered centrist in that I'm more between the 2 points than anything else.
Oh, I just reject both sides. I don't like the intersectionalists nor the TERFs. Although I dislike the TERFs more because I find their hatred more disgusting in a way. If that makes sense.
Like, they both act in very different ways. Like, the trans activist side are a lot more younger, and so they will use a lot more kind of. They will use memes that are often taken completely out of context. I mean, that does also mean that you will have them sending, like, fuck TERFs, kill TERFs, die TERF scum, and that kind of rhetoric just isn't on. I mean, it isn't the same as like sharing a meme or anything like that. But the Radfem side can be very, very, very condescending as well. And they could come up with some very strange arguments. Like when I've tried to make the argument of, like, I don't want anyone to be arrested for using wrong pronouns or anything like that. I just consider if you were to refer to me as a man, I would consider that quite rude. And I've had Radfems tell me that, I'm discriminating against them by saying that because of reasons. Like, so I'm telling them how to talk, and I'm like, I'm not telling you how to talk, but I'm saying that I don't really want to interact with people who are calling me a man. It's my choice not to do it. Or even if you say that referring to a trans woman as a man is rude, a lot of them will flip out by saying that, oh, you're telling us to lie. Like, I'm not telling you to lie. The person in front of you is clearly a woman. Like, just treat them with a bit of respect. So I do kind of think a lot of it is a stalemate.
I think there's two types of TERFs, There's TERFs who just can't accept them because it's feminism, it's for women. And because maybe it's an age thing, and they don't quite understand the trans thing, and maybe they think it's a separate issue. There's them, but then there's obviously the ones who think it's a big conspiracy by the patriarchy, by men, like us three, right? We're sending in agents who are becoming women. Like how the Romulans would have surgery to make themselves look human in Star Trek.
Well,
it's like
I never watched Star Trek.
Oh well, basically this alien race, the Romulans, who are like Spock. You've heard of Spock, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're like a cousin race. They split off because they wanted to be emotional, right? They're the bad guys, and to infiltrate Starfleet, they would always have surgery to look more human, basically. And that's basically what the TERFs think men are doing with trans women mainly, isn't it? Yeah, they think that they're agent provocateurs, and it's completely nonsensical.
One view that they seem to have when it comes to trans men is that women transition to men as a way of escaping their oppression, which is absolutely not what is happening, because they don't understand the progressive stack, or the idea that being trans in itself is an oppressed group. So nobody is transitioning to escape oppression. If anything, they're transitioning to gain further oppression points.
Yeah.
And with the barrier to being trans being so low nowadays, it's a very easy one for people to self-identify into. Laurie Penny is a good example of someone who comes from an incredibly comfortable background, someone who is kind of a hardened leftist, but has had family funding to be able to travel the world being a journalist. Like, Laurie Penny is absolutely a privileged person in a literal sense. But being just a woman anymore is not someone who is, just being a woman is not oppressed enough anymore. So if you can make yourself non-binary or a trans man,
you can still present as feminine or whatever you want and still get the points. That's what it is, I guess. So we have a shared love. You love Final Fantasy, so do I. I noticed you always play the music, and that's one of the things I like about your videos. I thought, oh, I know that music. That's the
mostly from Final Fantasy VIII
and 9 as well. I noticed.
Yeah, I've played one track from 7, but it's mostly 8 and 9.
Yeah,
I
have a thing on this whole feminist civil war issue. Is that feminism literally means nothing anymore? Because there were so many different factions within it. You have pro-porn, anti-porn, pro-trans, anti-trans.
That's been the case for 100 years.
Anymore. It's been the case for a long time. You have lots of different feminism isn't just a single church. There's lots of people within that movement who have their own views on various different subjects, and so you effectively have different churches within the Church of Feminism.
Yeah, and I still manage to not like any of it. Same thing, sort of, with conservatism. How it sort of means nothing anymore.
Now, the way I see it is the TERFs, especially the crazier ones, who you think it's all a big conspiracy. They're the true. I think they're the more true blood feminists than even the intersectionals and the other TERFs are, because they're the true man haters, if you know what I mean. Because
they absolutely are. A lot of them. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just they're proper second wave. I want to see a man like a pig. Like what Dworkin said. I want to see a man with a stiletto in his mouth or something. That's what they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a view that a lot of them have, and they don't like it when you point that out to them. Like I think it was Brian Paddock, like last year pointed out that a lot of the Radfems hate men, and one Radfem went on a massive rant against him, saying it was absolutely misogynistic for him to say that. Like, Radfems don't hate men, but then she ended it with, "Oh, but he would think this though because he's a gay man."
Oh yeah.
It's like you absolute hypocrite.
No.
Like.
That's part
I
of
don't
the
hate
course.
men. I just fucking hate men.
That's part of the course for a Rad fan to say that, because if you've watched Prince of Queens, you will know that they're the ones that spread this nasty rumor that gay men sexually assault women in gay bars, like this outrageous lie. Like, why would they do such a thing? That if it's one thing I know about a lot of my gay friends, they're scared of the women of that region of women. Like, they've said that loads of them. It's nothing to be ashamed
Women
of. It's
scare
what they're
me.
like. Well, if like a straight man would say, "Yeah, I don't." They're not afraid of women. It's just they find it icky. That's what
I
it
know.
is. The idea of it.
Yeah.
It's the same as a straight man would find it icky doing it with a man. It's not misogynistic.
I do know a lot of gay men who love breasts, though.
Oh yeah, I do.
Like, gay men definitely have a thing for boobs.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. Have you ever watched Skins?
Yeah.
Remember that episode where there's a girl, she's got big boobs, and then the gay friend sits down and he notices it. He goes, "Oh my!" I remember that. That's what you reminded me of. So anyway, we've passed the hour mark, so I think we'll end it there. So Chicago, last words.
Thank you for introducing me. Very late.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. Alkazai?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's unite against them.
Let's unite against the Rose. Any last words?
I've got a new video coming out next week. I'm also starting a new streaming series with Scrump called Seal of Approval, which begins on Wednesday at 8. And so far the first confirmed guest so far is Ariel Scorsella, but I'm trying to get a few other people on as well.
I forgot to mention her because they have this really weird. Well, it's not weird. They have a seething hatred of traitors, don't they? And she's one who's recently provoked that ire. Another one is, I know Dave Rubin's a meme, but he does. Yeah. Most of his hate comes from his betrayal, basically.
Well, that's it. A lot of them do hate people who disagree. Kind of, they think they control, but have actually broken away. Like, I get a hell of a lot of hate, and I've been referred to as a bootlicker dozens of times, simply because I don't follow along with their narrative.
Yeah.
Like, they genuinely think that they have control over all LGBT people, and to disagree with them on any point is effectively heresy.
Yeah, entitlement. But anyway, my last words is think happy thoughts, and remember when the looting starts, the seals start. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to be edgy. All right, see you later.
When the looting start, the seals start.
That's it. I was trying to think of a good.
The looting starts. The looting starts.